Last Tuesday night, I was lying in bed, scrolling. You know the kind, mindless, lazy scrolling through my phone. An ad popped up. Noise-canceling headphones. Limited time offer, it said. Only 3 left in stock. My thumb hovered over the Buy Now button. I didn't need headphones. I already owned 2 pairs. But that little voice started talking. These are better, though. Look at the reviews. And that sale ends tonight. You know what happened next. 2 clicks later, confirmation email. Purchase complete. By morning, regret. Deep, wallet-draining regret. If you've experienced this, and research shows 75% of us have, you already know impulse buying isn't about willpower. It's about psychology. The companies that want your money have spent millions understanding how your brain works. They've designed every pixel, every notification, every limited time offer to bypass your rational mind. But here's what they don't want you discovering. The same psychology that makes you buy can help you stop buying. Today, I'm sharing 3 psychological hacks. No budgets, no spreadsheets, no guilt. Just simple pre-commitment strategies that interrupt impulse spending before it happens. These techniques work with your brain, not against it. And they're backed by peer-reviewed research from institutions you'd recognize. Let me show you how this works. Let's start with what's really happening when you impulse buy. Most people think impulse purchases are character flaws. They're not. They're neurological responses to engineered environments. When you encounter something desirable, that jacket, those headphones, this gadget, your brain releases dopamine. That's a neurotransmitter creating pleasure and reinforcing behavior. Neuroscience research confirms increased dopamine activity heightens impulsive decision-making. This is the exact mechanism behind unplanned purchases. Your brain has 2 competing systems during buying decisions. The prefrontal cortex handles rational thinking and planning. But when you're tired, stressed, or distracted, this rational center gets overwhelmed. The emotional center takes over. Suddenly, that thing you didn't need 5 minutes ago feels absolutely essential. Here's the stunning part. The average American now spends $450 monthly on impulse purchases. That's $5,400 yearly. That's not vacation money. That's not emergency fund money. That's money vanishing into packages you'll barely remember ordering. A study published in the Journal of Consumer Research found something revealing. Researchers examined shopping behavior across physical stores and online platforms. They discovered 40% of consumers spend more than planned in physical stores, compared to 25% in online purchases. Why the difference? Online shopping requires waiting. The product arrives days later. That delay, it makes impulse purchases less feasible. The emotional urgency fades during shipping time. This insight reveals something crucial. Time is your ally against impulse buying. But digital retailers learned this lesson too. They spent billions removing that protective delay. One-click checkout, saved payment information, same-day delivery. Every innovation designed to collapse the space between want and purchase. Research from mobile commerce platforms shows something troubling. Mobile devices exhibit 43% higher add-to-cart rates compared to desktop computers. Touch interfaces create different psychological ownership effects. You literally feel closer to products on your phone than on your computer screen. The game is rigged, but you can rig it back. This hack sounds almost insultingly simple. Delete your saved credit cards from every shopping site. Remove Apple Pay. Disable Google Wallet. Make yourself manually enter 16 digits every single time you buy something online. Why does this work? Because friction saves money. Let me explain the psychology. Behavioral scientists call this payment decoupling. When you swipe a saved card, your brain doesn't register spending money. The purchase and payment feel disconnected. Separate events happening at different times. You buy today. The bill arrives next month. Your brain can't connect specific purchases to accumulating debt. Cash creates the opposite effect. When you hand over physical bills, your brain registers immediate loss. Researchers discovered that paying with cash activates the insular cortex, the same brain region processing physical pain. Credit cards bypass this protective mechanism entirely. A study from the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences found something remarkable. They tested a simple intervention, requiring people to manually enter credit card details before purchases. This single change reduced impulsive buying by 64% among regular credit card users. 64%. Not from budgeting. Not from financial education. Just from adding 10 seconds of inconvenience. Here's what happens during those 10 seconds. You must find your wallet, locate your card, type 16 numbers, enter the expiration date, add the security code. This creates multiple decision checkpoints. Each checkpoint gives your rational prefrontal cortex time to catch up with your emotional impulses. Most of those purchases, they never complete. By the time you've entered the fourth digit, you've reconsidered. That urgency dissolves. You realize you don't actually need this thing. One study examining e-commerce design practices surveyed online impulse buyers. Researchers asked what tools they wanted to help control spending. The most requested feature? Increased checkout effort. People explicitly wanted friction between impulse and purchase. Think about that. Consumers are asking companies to make buying harder because they understand their own vulnerability. Companies refuse, obviously. They've invested billions making checkout frictionless, so you must create friction yourself. Here's your implementation plan. First, tonight, visit every shopping site you've used in the last year. Delete saved payment information from each one. This includes the obvious sites, online retailers, grocery delivery apps, clothing stores, but also the sneaky ones, subscription services, entertainment platforms, food delivery apps. Second, disable digital wallets on your phone. Apple Pay makes iPhone purchases instantaneous. Google Wallet does the same for Android. Turn them off. Require authentication for every purchase. Third, log out after every shopping session. Don't stay logged in. Make yourself consciously log in next time you visit. This creates another decision point. You'll encounter resistance. Your brain will insist this is inconvenient. That's the point. Convenience enables impulse spending. Inconvenience protects you. One participant in a consumer behavior study described the strategy perfectly. I keep very little money on the card I use for online purchases. Another said, I delete shopping apps from my phone. These aren't signs of weakness. They're acts of intelligent self-defense against engineered manipulation. The second hack is equally simple but devastatingly effective. When you want to buy something non-essential, wait 24 hours before purchasing. No exceptions. Add the item to your cart. Close the browser. Walk away. Come back tomorrow. If you still want it then, consider buying it. Here's why this works. Impulse purchases are driven by present bias. That's a psychological quirk where you overvalue immediate rewards compared to future stability. The dopamine hit feels irresistible right now, but dopamine fades quickly, usually within hours. What felt urgent at noon feels unnecessary by evening. Research from Stanford University found implementing small interventions significantly reduces impulse buying. The 24-hour rule ranks among the most effective interventions studied. One study found it reduced impulsive purchases by rates comparable to the credit card deletion strategy. Another study examining live streaming e-commerce investigated time pressure effects on buying behavior. Researchers discovered something important. Time pressure increases impulsive buying through affective responses, emotions, rather than cognitive ones. Feelings override thinking. Limited time offers work because they trigger fear. Fear of missing out. Fear that someone else will buy the last one. Fear that the sale will end. Retailers deliberately create artificial scarcity. Only 2 left in stock. Sale ends in 3 hours. These messages don't describe reality. They manufacture emotional urgency. The 24-hour rule neutralizes this manipulation. You remove the time pressure. You create your own deliberate delay. During that delay, the emotional intensity dissipates. Your rational mind reasserts itself. Here's what happens during those 24 hours. Sleep plays a crucial role. Research confirms sleep significantly enhances cognitive function. Your brain processes information more effectively after rest. The purchase that seemed brilliant at midnight looks questionable in daylight. A survey examining impulse buying found most midnight shopping carts are abandoned when reviewed the next day. People wake up, look at their pending purchases, and wonder what they were thinking. The items lose their urgency, their appeal, their necessity. Studies show 48 hours works even better than 24 for distinguishing genuine needs from impulsive wants. But let's be realistic. 24 hours is achievable. 48 feels restrictive. Start with what you'll actually do consistently. Some people modify the rule based on purchase size. Anything under $50, wait 24 hours. Anything over $200, wait 72 hours. Adjust the thresholds to match your financial situation. The key is establishing the pause before you develop purchasing habits around it. One implementation strategy works particularly well. When you feel buying impulse, take a photo of the item. Note the price. Add it to a digital wish list or note-taking app. Include the date. Then close the shopping site completely. Don't keep the tab open. Don't keep the app running. Eliminate the easy path back to checkout. Tomorrow, review your wish list. Ask yourself 3 questions. Do I genuinely need this item? Will it provide long-term value? Can I afford it without compromising financial goals? Often, by the time you're asking these questions rationally, the answer becomes obvious. Research on consumer behavior found 3 strategies most commonly cited as successful for resisting impulse purchases: reflection, spending limits, and postponement. The 24-hour rule combines all 3. You postpone the decision. This creates space for reflection, which naturally leads to respecting spending limits you've set. The beauty of this hack: it doesn't require tracking expenses or maintaining budgets. You're not saying no to yourself. You're saying maybe later. That psychological difference reduces the sense of deprivation that makes budgets fail. The third hack operates on a deeper psychological level. It's called pre-commitment. You make decisions about future behavior while you're in a calm, rational state, before temptation arrives, before emotions take over. This strategy comes from behavioral economics. Nobel Prize-winning economist Richard Thaler developed the concept studying savings behavior, but it applies perfectly to spending. Here's how it works. Right now, while you're reading this, not scrolling shopping sites, not seeing ads, not feeling impulses, you make commitments about future purchases. You establish rules you'll follow when temptation hits. You limit your future options deliberately. The classic example comes from Greek mythology. Ulysses knew he'd sail past the sirens. Their songs made sailors throw themselves into the sea. So Ulysses ordered his crew to tie him to the mast. He physically prevented his future self from acting on impulses his present self knew were destructive. Modern pre-commitment looks different, but the principle remains identical. Research from behavioral economics confirms pre-commitment devices effectively change behavior. One famous study examined savings rates. The Save More Tomorrow program allowed employees to commit to increasing savings rates in the future each time they received raises. This single intervention dramatically increased retirement savings without requiring immediate sacrifice. The same principle works for spending. You create rules that your future impulsive self can't easily break. Rules like, I never buy anything advertised on social media, or I always sleep on purchases over $100, or I don't shop after 9 p.m. because evening me has terrible judgment. These aren't suggestions. They're contracts with yourself. Here's what makes pre-commitment powerful. You're not relying on willpower in the moment of temptation. Willpower fails. It gets depleted throughout the day. By evening, when impulse buying peaks, your willpower tank is empty. Pre-commitment doesn't use willpower. It uses rules you established earlier when your willpower was strong. A study examining pre-commitment and motivation found something revealing. Researchers discovered people choose pre-commitment when they have a preferred action, but motivation for that action gets reduced by opportunity costs. In plain language, you know what you want long-term, but short-term opportunities threaten that goal. Pre-commitment protects your long-term preferences. How do you implement this? First, identify your personal spending triggers. Most people have 3 or 4 situations that consistently lead to impulse purchases. Maybe it's boredom scrolling on your phone. Maybe it's shopping with certain friends who encourage spending. Maybe it's walking through specific stores. Maybe it's receiving email promotions. Track your purchases for 2 weeks. Look for patterns. When do you impulse buy? What emotional state precedes it? What time of day? Recognition precedes control. You can't change patterns you don't see. Second, create specific pre-commitment rules addressing each trigger. Make them concrete and measurable. Not "I'll spend less online." That's too vague. Instead, I delete shopping apps from my phone after 8 p.m. and reinstall them the next morning if still needed. Or, I unsubscribe from promotional emails immediately when they arrive. Third, increase the cost of breaking your pre-commitment. Public commitments work better than private ones. Tell someone about your rules. A friend, a partner, a family member. Research shows public commitments leverage social pressure and accountability. We're more likely to keep promises others know about. Some people create financial costs. They tell a friend, "If you catch me impulse buying this month, I donate $50 to a charity." The threat of losing money to a cause, even a good cause, creates deterrence. Fourth, replace the impulse buying behavior with something else. You can't just stop a habit. You must replace it with a different habit. When you feel the urge to shop, do something else instead. Call a friend, go for a walk, read a book, exercise. The goal isn't suppression, it's substitution. Research on impulse buying found people who develop awareness of their emotional triggers report greater success controlling purchases. They recognize when boredom or stress drive shopping. Then they address the underlying emotion instead of medicating it with purchases. One study participant described successful resistance this way: "I try to really think whether I need the item and how often I will use it. Do I really need the item right now?" Another said, "I talk it over with someone before making a decision." These reflection strategies work because they activate rational thinking before impulsive action. Pre-commitment isn't about perfection. You'll break your rules occasionally. That's fine. The goal is changing the overall pattern, reducing impulse purchases from frequent to occasional, from automatic to thoughtful. A field experiment in behavioral change found something encouraging. The greater the cost of breaking a commitment, the more effective it is. But even small commitments produce measurable results. Every boundary you establish, every rule you follow, every trigger you neutralize, it all compounds over time. Let me explain why these 3 hacks work at a neurological level. Your brain evolved to prioritize immediate rewards over delayed benefits. This is called temporal discounting. Your brain values something available now much more than the same thing available later, even when waiting would be the rational choice. This isn't a design flaw. This is a survival mechanism. Throughout human evolution, immediate rewards were more certain than future promises. A meal today was more valuable than the promise of a meal next week, because next week you might be dead. Modern consumer capitalism exploits this ancient wiring ruthlessly. Every marketing technique, every sales promotion, every limited time offer, it all targets temporal discounting. Companies know your brain overvalues immediate gratification, so they position purchases as immediate rewards. The 3 hacks I've shared work because they introduce delay between impulse and action. Friction creates time. Time allows your prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, to catch up with your limbic system, the emotional part. Deleting saved payment information creates delay. The 24-hour rule creates delay. Pre-commitment rules create delay. All 3 operate on the same principle. When you slow down, you make better decisions. Let's address the obvious objection. These hacks sound inconvenient. They are. That's the entire point. Modern life optimizes for convenience. Frictionless payments. One-click ordering. Instant gratification. But unlimited convenience isn't neutral. It actively harms your financial health. Convenience makes impulse buying effortless. which means convenience makes impulse buying inevitable. You must consciously choose inconvenience. This requires shifting your perspective. Stop viewing friction as an obstacle. Start viewing friction as protection. Those 10 seconds entering credit card details, that's 10 seconds your rational brain has to intervene. That 24-hour waiting period, that's time for emotional intensity to dissipate. Those pre-commitment rules, that's your past rational self protecting your future impulsive self. Research on consumer spending behavior found average Americans would benefit dramatically from understanding these principles. Most households maintain net worth below $20,000 when excluding home equity. They earn good incomes but accumulate minimal wealth. They live paycheck to paycheck. Impulse buying contributes significantly to this pattern. $5,400 annually on impulse purchases, that's the average. Eliminate half of that. You've created $2,700 yearly. Over 10 years, that's $27,000. Invested, that becomes substantially more. This isn't about denying yourself pleasures. It's about making conscious choices rather than reactive purchases. It's about buying things you actually want instead of things that momentarily excited your dopamine system. Studies examining post-purchase regret found 16% of people regret impulse purchases. That number seems low until you realize it represents billions of dollars of regretted spending annually. That's billions of dollars exchanged for nothing but guilt and clutter. The 3 hacks I've shared cost nothing to implement. They require no special tools, no apps, no tracking, no budgeting. Just 3 simple decisions enforced consistently. First, delete saved payment information. Second, wait 24 hours before non-essential purchases. Third, create pre-commitment rules addressing your personal triggers. Do these 3 things starting today. Not next week, not after you've thought about it. Today, right now. Delete those saved cards. Establish the waiting rule. Identify one trigger and create one pre-commitment rule addressing it. Start small. Build from there. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is progress. That night I told you about the headphones I didn't need. I eventually returned them. Cost me return shipping, cost me time, cost me the hassle of repacking and driving to the post office. But you know what it really cost me? It cost me the realization that my spending was being controlled by systems I didn't understand. By psychological manipulation I couldn't see. By engineered environments exploiting my brain's vulnerabilities. That realization changed everything. Not overnight, not dramatically, but gradually, consistently. I deleted my saved cards, all of them. Yes, it's annoying entering 16 digits. That annoyance saves me thousands yearly. I established the 24-hour rule, not perfectly. Sometimes I break it, but following it 80% of the time produces dramatically better results than following it 0% of the time. I identified my triggers: late-night phone scrolling, social media ads, email promotions. I created specific rules addressing each one. Log out after 8 p.m. Never buy from social media ads. Unsubscribe immediately from promotional emails. These aren't restrictions. They're liberations. They freed me from the constant low-level anxiety of wondering why my bank balance never matches my income. They freed me from the shame of packages arriving that I barely remember ordering. They freed me from the manipulation I didn't know was controlling me. You can have the same freedom. It starts with recognizing the game, understanding the psychology, then implementing simple hacks that work with your brain instead of against it. No budgeting required, no spreadsheets, no guilt, just friction. Deliberate, protective, money-saving friction. The companies that want your money have spent millions engineering systems to bypass your rationality. Now, you know how to engineer your life to bypass their manipulation. Delete those cards. Establish that waiting period. Create those rules, starting now.